Once in a decade there comes a trader so talented at losing money that he achieves something so incredibly rare that the ancient Greek philosophers didn't even dare to dream about. It's often discussed as the peak of humanity, the impossible feat, the holy trifecta of losses. You see, to achieve true enlightenment you not only have to lose your whole life savings, you also have to borrow money and lose that too, and on top of that you still have to pay taxes from capital gains of the previous year. And it is my honor to present to you a trader who achieved what only a few dare to dream. He goes by the name of Krita SCR, and he's now in debt. Now his chart says that in just a year he lost 99.99% of his money, or $257,135.08, and was left with just $9.09. But that's sadly not the case. Now you might be wondering what the hell can be worse than losing $250,000 in just a year. Well, realizing losses of $430,000 of course. But once again, that's not all. He went short on QQQ early this year with selling options, which just means he was using leverage while expecting the market to go down. And aside from borrowing money to keep holding his options longer for an anticipated market crash which resulted in a huge debt, he also has to pay $80,000 in taxes from capital gains in 2022. Now the funny thing is that at first he wanted to be neutral and go with the market, but the SVB collapse forced him to exercise on an in-the-money sell option, and he ended up with shorting 3,500 QQQ shares. He was getting a bit brainwashed by bears like Burry, so he had the feeling it was getting worse from there on, which is why he kept the position instead of taking the loss. But obviously the market did the opposite, and while it was gradually going up, he had to sell more and more long positions to cover the spread. And with the loss growing larger and larger, he even started to ignore risk management with the hope of not having to realize a gradually growing loss. He sacrificed his savings account in the hopes he could save the mess, and around August, to avoid liquidation, he even allocated money from a different account he held for paying taxes. But shortly after that, QQQ made another rise up, and then he started worrying that this could end pretty badly. And looking back, it's hard to tell why he was so naive and blind about it. I mean, he's been in the stock market for 8 years, was aware of the risk, followed multiple sources, but his wishful thinking kept him on the market crash soon bias. And I guess the loss wouldn't even be that painful if it was just inheritance, but instead it was all from hard work. His capital came from holding stocks for over 8 years and a salary, but now with the loans he took, he's around $140,000 in debt. On top of that, he's hitting 30 soon, and that was his life savings, so it'll take him some years to pay the debt and then he can start again. Now luckily for him, there are still some traders proving that you can make insane gains with just a little bit of money and ambitions. As trader by the name of X Gonna Give It To You turned just $1,000 into $350,000 in the past month, but his journey began 3 years ago when he lost about $6,000 on biotech and decided to stop using Robinhood for 3 years. But then on November the 1st, he suddenly came back with a plan and high ambitions. He deposited $1,041.15 and started making a ton of gains. In less than a month, his account was already worth $48,281.02 because he traded a lot of buying call options. Now obviously he wasn't going to stop, because just 2 days later he posted a YOLO on 1 and 2 weeks till expiry buying call options. Now from this point on, his charts will have a slight difference between the gain and account worth amounts. For example, we can see that he's down by $42,000 while his account is worth just $28,000, and that's because he did something not many traders do after making huge gains, and actually withdrew $15,000 to pay off student loans and buy Christmas gifts for close relatives. But despite making this smart decision, he shortly felt quite dumb because he missed out on a lot of potential gains. You see, the stock has been on an absolute rampage after hitting the bottom on October the 25th. I mean, it's even up by 46% since then, which brings me to another point. How did he time the bottom so perfectly? I mean, he deposited money just a week after the stock hit the bottom, and it's been going up for a month straight, but more about that later. Now obviously his calls started printing almost immediately, and he was soon up by $105,000, but because he's just 21, he wanted a lot more money, which is why he kept on holding his calls. And as we all know, the reason Icarus fell is because he went straight towards the sun. Instead, you gotta fly gradually closer until you get a feel for your melting point, which is why he's leveraged to the tits right now and gets a 15% return investment every time the stock goes up $1. But why did he even choose Boeing as his savior, and how did he time his trade almost perfectly? Well, he did an extremely long post about it, which I'm going to shorten up. He had 3 reasons for buying COS. The first one was that the company started expanding into unmanned combat aerial vehicles, or in this case drone fighters, with the US Air Force interested in buying 1000 such units starting in 2024. Second, in the recent Dubai Air Show, Boeing notably outperformed Airbus in new orders. And lastly, the company had a freeze on activities in China since 2017, but he was speculating that this could soon change. Having that said, his patience paid off massively, with his account continuously going up to $159,000, and in just a matter of days it got to $346,933.50, forming a perfect exponential chart. Now, he did actually close the positions that got him this high, but he also opened $120,000 worth of new calls, mostly expiring next year. And at the same time, he bought roughly $110,000 worth of Ethereum as a part of his long-term portfolio. Hopefully he'll slowly transition from being leveraged to the tits to being a more responsible investor, so he doesn't end up like this next trader who has a history of being margin called. He goes by the name of the Hammeister, who just recently got margin called for $630,000, with his account being worth negative $351,000. Now, he actually started playing with some options a couple of years ago, but it was nothing serious, and as most traders, once he got the taste for profits, he couldn't quit, which is why he naturally progressed to bigger positions with a $10,000 gain on Google shares. And then a year ago he got his first scare by getting a potential margin call which was actually just an error, and then he somehow made a 10,000% gain on bonds, meaning that he turned just about $60 into almost $6,000 with bonds. I mean, bonds are known to be a lot less volatile than stocks, and people usually invest in them when they get older and are getting close to retirement. They are used to preserve money and not to make 10,000% or 100x gains, which is even hard to do with options. And just to spice it up, he didn't do this once. Oh no, he somehow continued making even more money from bonds, and I mean a serious amount of money, as he was once again up by 10,000%, making $24,000. But even all these impossible gains couldn't save him from his inevitable doom, as we have finally came to his insane margin call of $630,394, and apparently he sold something he didn't have while hoping to buy it back at a lower price, thereby profiting on the difference, or in other words, he was just shorting something. But the price of that something went up, and well, the rest is history. Now, judging by his recent posts, that something was AMC. So now he's left with asking his fellow traders if he can borrow some money. With that, I wish you happy holidays, and if you want to see how this trader turned just $20,000 into $1.2 million in just a day, click on the video that just popped up. If you like my content, make sure to subscribe, and if you have any questions or recommendations, leave in the comments down below, and thanks for watching.